They handcuffed a man in front of his own children for being out of place. But what they discovered about this family man changed everything. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything. It was a sunny Saturday morning when Marcus Thompson drove his black BMW through the elegant streets of the Hamptons. In the back seat, his 8-year-old twins, Maya and David, laughed as they pointed at the beachfront mansions. Beside him, his wife Sarah adjusted her sunglasses, smiling with the peace of someone who had finally fulfilled a dream. "Daddy, is our vacation house going to be like that one?" Maya asked, pointing at a grand property with impeccable gardens. Marcus smiled through the rearview mirror. "Even better, princess. Much better." Sarah held her husband's hand. 20 years of marriage, 2 kids, a brilliant medical career, and a clinic that saved lives every day. They had built something solid, something real. Marcus was more than a doctor. He was a nationally recognized cardiovascular surgeon, with dozens of awards and thousands of lives saved by his hands. But none of that mattered in that moment, because to the outside world, they were just another black family driving an expensive car in a neighborhood where they didn't belong. The GPS signaled the entrance to the rental property, a 3-story house overlooking the ocean, with an infinity pool and gardens that looked like they came straight out of a magazine. Sarah had booked it through an online platform, using all their yearly savings to give the kids an unforgettable vacation. "We're here," Marcus announced, parking in the circular stone driveway. The kids jumped out of the car, running through the garden with contagious energy. Sarah began unloading the luggage while Marcus checked the reservation documents on his phone. Everything was perfect. Payment confirmation, keys in the lockbox, detailed instructions. They didn't know that just 3 houses down, a neighbor had already dialed the police. There's a suspicious family at the Morrison house. People who clearly don't belong in this neighborhood. Marcus opened the front door, taking a deep breath. The scent of fine wood and the sound of waves crashing on the beach created a total atmosphere of peace. Sarah hugged him from behind. "We did it, love. We finally gave them this." He turned around and kissed his wife's forehead. 20 years saving lives in the public hospital, building a solid reputation, fighting daily prejudice in the medical field. Every 36-hour shift, every emergency surgery, every family he had comforted after a loss. It had all been worth it to get to that moment. "Dr. Thompson, you deserve this and so much more," Sarah whispered, using the title that still made her proud after all these years. The kids ran inside, screaming with joy as they discovered the game room on the 2nd floor. Marcus and Sarah looked at each other, sharing that moment of quiet victory. They had made it. They had built a life that was dignified, prosperous, full of love. But dignity, they would discover in a few minutes, was not something everyone could see in the color of their skin. The first police car arrived 15 minutes later, then the second, then the third. Marcus was in the kitchen making sandwiches for the kids when he heard the sirens. Sarah was in the living room, picking up the toys the twins had scattered across the floor. "Police! Open the door!" Marcus's heart raced. Not because he was afraid of anything he had done nothing, but because he was afraid of what could happen. He knew these stories. He had treated the victims of these stories in his hospital. "Stay calm, love," he whispered to Sarah, who had already gone pale. It must be a misunderstanding. When he opened the door, 6 officers were waiting, guns drawn, tense expressions, eyes that judged him before he could say a word. "ID, now," said Sergeant Johnson, a man in his 50s with a gray mustache and hard eyes. "Of course, officer. May I ask what the problem is?" "The problem is you being here. This house was broken into." Marcus felt his world collapse. Sarah approached, holding the reservation documents with trembling hands. "Officer, here's our confirmation. We rented the house legally, paid in advance." "Fake documents," Johnson interrupted, without even looking at the papers. "Turn around, hands on the wall." "Daddy?" Maya's voice echoed from the stairs. The twins ran down, stopping abruptly when they saw the officers. That's when Marcus realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was something much bigger. Something he knew but had never experienced so brutally, so directly. "Please," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm so the children wouldn't be scared. "I'm a doctor. Dr. Marcus Thompson, cardiovascular surgeon at General Hospital. Here are my professional credentials. Our confirmed reservation." "Shut up," Johnson growled. "Breaking and entering. Document forgery. Resisting arrest." The handcuffs closed around Marcus's wrists in front of his own children. Sarah screamed. The children started crying. And Marcus, the man who saved lives every day, who had dedicated 2 decades to serving his community, was dragged away like a criminal. But what the officers didn't know, what they would discover in the coming hours, would change not only their careers, but their lives forever. Because Dr. Marcus Thompson was not just any doctor. The precinct was cold, and Marcus could feel the metal of the handcuffs cutting into his wrists. 3 hours had passed since his arrest, and he still hadn't been allowed to make a call. Sarah and the children were in a separate room, giving Statements about a break-in that never happened. Full name, said the clerk, without lifting his eyes from the computer screen. Dr. Marcus Thompson, cardiovascular surgeon, medical license 47892. The man laughed with disdain. Sure you are, doctor. And I'm an astronaut. Marcus took a deep breath. 20 years in medicine had taught him to stay calm in extreme situations. When a patient was dying on the operating table, when he had to deliver the worst news in the world to a family, he always found strength in serenity. Can I make my call now? Yeah, sure. To your criminal lawyer. In the room next door, Sarah was trying to comfort the twins, who kept asking why the bad men had taken Daddy away. She herself was still trying to understand how a legal reservation, paid in advance, with all documents in order, had turned into this nightmare. Mrs. Thompson, said the female officer accompanying them, her tone slightly gentler. Are you sure you're not being coerced? This man didn't force you to lie about the rental? Sarah looked at her with a mix of disbelief and outrage. Officer, my husband is a doctor, a surgeon. We rented that house legally. We have all the proof. That's what they all say, honey. Meanwhile, Marcus was finally allowed to use the phone. But instead of calling a lawyer, he dialed a number he knew by heart. General Hospital, Cardiac ICU. Nurse Rodriguez? This is Dr. Thompson. Dr. Marcus. So good to hear your voice. How's the vacation going? I need to speak with Dr. Harrison. It's urgent. Dr. James Harrison was more than the hospital's medical director. He was the man who had hired Marcus 15 years ago, who had watched him grow from a young resident to one of the most respected surgeons on the East Coast. He was also his closest friend. Marcus? Man, you're supposed to be relaxing on the beach. James? I'm under arrest. Silence on the other end. What do you mean under arrest? Marcus quickly explained the situation. The rented house, the arrival of the police, the absurd accusations, the degrading treatment. This is completely outrageous, Harrison said, his voice rising with anger. Marcus, you saved the mayor's son 2 months ago. You operated on the police chief's wife last year. I'm a black man driving an expensive car in a rich neighborhood, James. That's all they see. On the other end, Harrison was already grabbing his car keys. I'm on my way, and I'm bringing half the hospital with me. Because what the officers didn't know, what they would find out in less than an hour, was that Dr. Marcus Thompson had saved more lives in that city than any other practicing physician. His hands had operated on everyone from governors' children to homeless people. He never distinguished between color, social class, or bank account. In the last decade, Marcus had performed over 2,000 heart surgeries. Success rate, 97%. Among his patients were judges, politicians, businessmen, and also police officers. Very soon, Sergeant Johnson would discover that Dr. Marcus Thompson had saved his own daughter's life 3 years ago, when she was born with a congenital heart defect. But at that moment, all Johnson saw was an intruder that needed to be humiliated. Your lawyer's here, said the clerk, pointing down the hallway. Marcus stood up, expecting to see an overworked public defender. Instead, he saw Dr. Harrison accompanied by a man in a flawless suit, the hospital's private attorney, and 3 other people he recognized immediately. Dr. Patricia Silva, head of pediatric cardiology, head nurse Rodriguez, and Dr. Amanda Foster, the cardiologist who had been a resident under Marcus's supervision and was now considered one of the best in the field. Dr. Thompson, said the lawyer, extending his hand. I'm Robert Chen. Dr. Harrison told me what happened. This is absolutely unacceptable. But it was Dr. Patricia who spoke with the most indignation. Marcus, this is the man who saved 17 children just last year. 17. Babies who are alive today because of his hands. The clerk who had overheard the conversation finally looked up from the computer. Wait, are you talking about Dr. Marcus Thompson, the surgeon who operated on the congressman's son? The lawyer smiled coldly. Exactly. The same doctor. Thompson, who saved Sergeant Johnson's daughter's life in 2021. 8-hour operation, complex heart defect, 2-month-old baby. The clerk turned pale, because at that moment, everyone at the precinct began to realize the magnitude of the mistake they had made. It wasn't just any doctor being humiliated there. It was the doctor who had saved more lives in that city over the past 15 years, and the story was only just beginning. The precinct phone wouldn't stop ringing. In less than 2 hours, the news had spread through the entire hospital, then the medical community, then the entire city. Dr. Marcus Thompson, the man who saved lives every day, had been arrested for trespassing while on vacation with his family. Sergeant Johnson was in his office when the phone rang for the 10th time in 10 minutes. Hampton's Police Department. Hello, this is Mayor Morrison. I need to speak to Johnson. Now. Johnson swallowed hard. The mayor never called the station directly. Sergeant Johnson speaking. Mr. Mayor. Johnson, explain something to me. Why the hell is the doctor who saved my son's life sitting in your jail? Johnson's world collapsed in that moment. Dr. Marcus Thompson. The name echoed in his mind like a distant thunder, bringing back a memory he had tried to bury 3 years ago. His newborn daughter, Emma, her heart failing in the neonatal ICU. the doctors saying there was no hope. And then that calm man with steady hands who entered the room and said, "We're going to save your daughter." 8 hours of surgery. 8 hours in which Johnson prayed like he had never prayed before. And when Dr. Thompson stepped out of the operating room, pulled down his mask, and simply said, "She's going to be fine. Emma will live a normal life," Johnson ran down the precinct hallway, his heart pounding out of rhythm. There he was, Dr. Marcus Thompson, the man who had saved his daughter, sitting in a hard chair, handcuffed like a common criminal. Dr. Thompson? Marcus looked up. There was something familiar in that face, but he couldn't quite place it. "Sergeant Johnson," Marcus said calmly. "May I ask why?" "I'm still here. My documents have been verified. The reservation is legitimate. My family is traumatized." Johnson's hands were trembling. "Doctor, you operated on a baby 3 years ago. Emma Johnson. Complex heart defect." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, accessing his medical memory. Thousands of surgeries, thousands of faces, but he remembered every single one. Emma Johnson. Born with tetralogy of Fallot, complicated by pulmonary atresia. 8-hour and 15-minute surgery. How is she? She's 4 now. Runs, plays, laughs like any child. Because of you. Johnson pulled the keys from his pocket with shaking hands. "Dr. Thompson, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Truly." "You didn't know because you didn't bother to check before humiliating me in front of my children," Marcus said, with a calm that was more devastating than any scream. But the situation was just beginning to unravel for Johnson and his colleagues. The precinct doors opened, and a well-dressed man in a dark suit entered, flanked by 2 women. Johnson recognized him immediately. It was Federal Judge William Hayes. "Where is Dr. Thompson?" Hayes asked, with absolute authority. "Your Honor," Johnson stammered. "Dr. Thompson operated on my wife 2 years ago, cancer that had spread to her heart. Doctors said she had 2 weeks to live. He performed a surgery no one else dared attempt. Margaret is alive today because of him." One of the women accompanying the judge stepped forward. It was Margaret Hayes, tears in her eyes. "Dr. Thompson, do you remember me?" Marcus smiled for the first time in hours. "Of course, Margaret. How are you feeling?" "I'm alive, doctor. Thanks to you." Judge Hayes turned to Johnson with barely contained fury. "Sergeant, you arrested one of the most respected physicians in the country for what exactly?" Before Johnson could respond, more people entered the precinct. A whole family. Parents, grandparents, 3 children. "Where's Dr. Thompson?" asked the elderly man. "We heard they arrested the doctor who saved our grandson." Johnson had gone pale. The precinct was filling up with people. Entire families who had been touched by the miraculous hands of Marcus Thompson. Lives he had saved, hearts he had repaired, tears he had dried. Sarah and the children were released and ran into Marcus's arms the moment the handcuffs were removed. "Daddy, why did they do this to you?" asked David, his eyes swollen from crying. Marcus held his children tightly, feeling the weight of 20 years of honest work, of lives saved, of families reunited. "Sometimes, my son, people judge you by what they see on the outside, not by who you are on the inside." But the lesson was only just beginning, because in the next few minutes, Johnson and his colleagues would discover that Dr. Marcus Thompson wasn't just an exceptional doctor. He was much more than that. And when the full truth came to light, the impact would be devastating. Marcus's phone rang while he was still hugging his family in the hallway of the precinct. It was Dr. Harrison again, but this time his voice was different. There was an urgency, an anxiety that Marcus had rarely heard in 15 years of friendship. "Marcus, you need to come to the hospital. Now." "James, I was just released. My family is traumatized. We need to—" "Marcus," Harrison interrupted. "It's about the emergency surgery. The patient who just arrived is special." Something in his friend's tone made Marcus freeze. In 15 years, he had never seen Harrison this desperate. "Who is the patient?" "The city's police. Commissioner Robert Patterson. Massive heart attack. His arteries are completely blocked. He has minutes, not hours." Marcus closed his eyes. Commissioner Patterson, the man who oversaw the entire regional police force, the man responsible for supervising the conduct of men like Johnson. "James, there are other capable surgeons. You yourself could." "Marcus, you don't understand. His family specifically requested you. His wife said she only trusts your hands. She knows your reputation." Sarah held her husband's arm. "Love, you're not obligated to—" Marcus looked at Johnson, who was clearly listening to the conversation. The sergeant was pale, beginning to understand the implications of the situation. "Dr. Thompson," said Johnson, his voice strained. "The commissioner, he's my direct superior. If you could—" "You arrested me 3 hours ago," Marcus said calmly. "You humiliated me in front of my children, treated me like a criminal. I know, and now you want me to save your boss's life." The silence in the precinct was deafening. Everyone present, Judge Hayes, the families, the officers, understood the moral weight of that moment. Sarah whispered in her husband's ear, The decision is yours, love. No one will judge you if you say no. Marcus looked at his children. Maya and David watched him with those wide eyes, trying to understand why the daddy who saved lives every day was hesitating to save one more. Daddy always saves people, right? Maya asked innocently. And in that moment, Marcus understood who he truly was. It didn't matter the color of his skin. It didn't matter how people treated him. It didn't matter if they respected him or not. He was a doctor. He had sworn to save lives. All lives. Let's go to the hospital, Marcus said, grabbing the car keys. Johnson stepped forward. Dr. Thompson, may I come with you? The commissioner is like a father to me. Marcus looked him in the eyes. You may, but you're going to witness firsthand what it truly means to be a man. The ride to the hospital was silent. Sarah drove while Marcus mentally prepared for yet another surgery that could change a life. In the back seat, the children slept, exhausted from the day's trauma. When they arrived at the hospital, Marcus was welcomed like a hero returning from war. Nurses, residents, doctors, they all knew what had happened at the precinct. They all knew he was coming back not out of obligation, but out of love for medicine. Dr. Thompson, said head nurse Rodriguez, the patient is being prepped. Massive infarction, major arteries blocked. It's a very high-risk surgery. Marcus nodded, heading to the locker room to change. Johnson followed him to the door. Doctor, I need to say something. Marcus stopped, his back turned to him. My daughter, Emma, she always talks about the angel doctor who saved her life. She draws you, draws your hands operating on her little heart. To her, you're a hero. Marcus slowly turned around. And today I arrested my own daughter's hero. I humiliated the man who gave life to the most important person in the world to me. Tears streamed down the sergeant's face. Dr. Thompson, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I do deserve to carry this shame for the rest of my life. Marcus placed a hand on Johnson's shoulder. Sergeant, learn from this. Teach your colleagues. Teach your daughter. Next time you look at someone, see the human being first, not the color of their skin. 40 minutes later, Marcus entered the operating room. Commissioner Patterson was unconscious, connected to machines that were artificially keeping his heart beating, pressures dropping. The anesthesiologist announced, Doctor, he's crashing. Marcus took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a second, and asked for strength. Not to save that particular man, but to honor the oath he had taken 20 years ago. Scalpel. For 5 hours and 32 minutes, Marcus fought for Robert Patterson's life. 5 hours in which his miraculous hands worked to unblock arteries, reconnect vessels, give a man's heart a second chance. A man who might never know who had truly saved him. When Marcus left the operating room, he removed his mask and was met by a crowd in the hallway. The Patterson family, Johnson and other officers, Dr. Harrison, dozens of nurses and doctors. How is he, doctor? The commissioner's wife asked, eyes filled with tears. He's going to be fine. The surgery was a complete success. Johnson collapsed into a chair, covering his face with his hands, but Marcus wasn't done yet. Mrs. Patterson, there's something I need to tell you. The commissioner's wife, Helen Patterson, was visibly shaken, still trying to process that her husband had survived the heart attack. She held Marcus's hands tightly, as if he were hope made flesh. Dr. Thompson, you said my husband is going to be okay, but there's something you need to know. Helen frowned, not understanding. This morning, while I was on vacation with my family, I was arrested by officers from the department your husband commands. Arrested for trespassing while legally occupying a house I rented for my kids. Vacation. Helen's face turned pale. She looked at Johnson, who kept his head down, then back at Marcus. I was handcuffed in front of my 8-year-old twins. I was humiliated, treated like a criminal, judged by the color of my skin before any facts were checked. Helen put a hand on her chest, clearly in shock. Dr. Thompson, I didn't know. 3 hours after being released, I got a call saying your husband was dying, and that the family specifically asked for me to operate on him. Helen started to cry. Mrs. Patterson, I could have said no. I could have claimed emotional trauma, demanded formal apologies, filed a lawsuit against the department, but I did none of that. Marcus paused, choosing his next words carefully. I saved your husband's life because that's what I do. It doesn't matter who the person is. It doesn't matter how they treat me. It doesn't matter what color their skin is or mine. I'm a doctor, and doctors save lives. Helen broke down in tears. Dr. Thompson, how can I ever thank you? Don't thank me. Use this to educate. When your husband wakes up, tell him what happened today. Tell him the man who saved his life was humiliated by his own officers just hours before holding his heart in his hands. Johnson stepped forward, still with tears in his eyes. Dr. Thompson, can I tell my daughter about this? Emma needs to know what kind of man truly saved her life. Marcus smiled for the first time since the morning. Of course, and tell her to keep drawing. One day she might be a doctor too. 2 weeks later, Marcus received a phone call that would change not only his life, but the lives of many others. Dr. Thompson, this is Robert Patterson, police commissioner. Commissioner, how are you feeling? Alive, thanks to you. Dr. Thompson, I need to see you in person. There are things I need to make right. On the scheduled day, Marcus went to the commissioner's office. Patterson looked different, more humble, more reflective. Beside him stood Johnson and 3 other officers Marcus recognized from the I station. "Dr. Thompson," said Patterson, rising slowly. "First, thank you for saving my life. Second, I apologize for the disgraceful way you were treated by my officers. Commissioner, please let me finish. What happened to you was unacceptable. Institutional racism that will no longer be tolerated in this department." Patterson opened a folder on the desk. "We've implemented a new mandatory training protocol on racial bias and police conduct. Every officer will be retrained. Sergeant Johnson will lead the program." Johnson stepped forward. "Dr. Thompson, we're asking you to consider being our consultant on this program. We want officers to hear your story, learn from it." Marcus thought for a moment. "I'll accept, but on one condition." "What is it?" "I want part of the training to take place in the hospital. I want officers to see Black doctors saving lives, Black nurses caring for patients, Black professionals serving the community with excellence. I want them to see our humanity before they see our color." 6 months later, Marcus stood in a packed auditorium, speaking to an audience of police officers from across the region. "My name is Dr. Marcus Thompson. 6 months ago, you would have known me as the Black suspect driving a BMW. Today, you know me as the man who saved Commissioner Patterson's life." He paused, looking at the dozens of attentive faces. "I haven't changed in 6 months. My skin color is the same, my professional competence is the same, my character is the same. What changed was your perspective." In the front row, Johnson sat holding his daughter Emma. The little girl clutched a drawing of the angel doctor, as she always called him. The difference between being seen as a suspect or a hero doesn't lie in who we are. It lies in how you choose to see us. Marcus walked between the rows of the auditorium, making eye contact with each officer. "Today, I want to introduce you to some people." The lights came on at the side of the auditorium, revealing a line of people. Sarah and the twins stood there, but they weren't alone. Helen Patterson held her husband's hand, still recovering. Entire families, dozens of them, people of all ages and colors. These are some of the over 2,000 families whose lives my hands have touched over the last 15 years. Hearts I've operated on, lives I've saved, tears I've dried. Elderly woman approached the microphone. "My name is Dorothy Williams. Dr. Thompson operated on my heart 5 years ago. I was 78. No one wanted to risk the surgery." He said, "Ms. Dorothy, don't you have grandkids to raise? I'm 83 now and just watched my granddaughter graduate college." A young man in a military uniform stepped onto the stage. "I'm Lieutenant Kevin Rodriguez, U.S. Navy. Dr. Thompson operated on me when I was 16. A heart defect they found by chance. Without that surgery, I'd never have served my country." Marcus watched the officers' faces change with each testimony. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked down, clearly reflecting on their own behavior. "Sergeant Johnson," Marcus called. "Would you like to say something?" Johnson stood up, Emma still in his arms. "Colleagues, 6 months ago, I handcuffed the man who saved my daughter's life. I called him an intruder, a criminal, a liar. I did that because I looked at his skin color before I looked at his character." His voice trembled. "Emma, tell the officers who this man is." The 4-year-old girl took the microphone in her tiny hands. "He's my angel doctor. He fixed my heart when I was a baby. Daddy says he gave me a new life." The auditorium fell silent. Marcus returned to the center of the stage. "Officers, I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here because I believe in the human capacity to change, to grow, to redeem." He pointed at Johnson. "Sergeant Johnson made a terrible mistake, but look at what he did after. He took responsibility, apologized, and now leads a program to make sure others don't make the same mistake." Marcus paused. "That's what I call character, not the absence of flaws, but the courage to acknowledge and correct them." A young officer raised his hand. "Dr. Thompson, how can you forgive? How can you save the lives of people who treated you badly?" Marcus smiled. "Because I discovered something essential. When you carry hatred in your heart, the one who suffers most is you. When I choose to forgive, I'm not doing a favor to those who hurt me. I'm setting myself free." He looked at Sarah, who smiled proudly at her husband. "Besides, my kids are watching. Maya and David need to learn that we are bigger than the prejudice we face, that our dignity doesn't come from how others treat us, but from how we choose to respond." Maya walked up to the stage and looked at her father. "Daddy, can I talk?" Marcus picked her up. "Of course, princess. My daddy saves people every day. When I grow up, I want to be like him. I want to help people even when they're mean to me." There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. Commissioner Patterson stood up with effort. "Dr. Thompson, on behalf of the entire police force in this region, I offer our official apologies for what happened. But more than that, I want to announce something." Patterson looked out over the entire room. "From today forward, I'm instituting the Dr. Marcus Thompson program, a permanent racial bias training protocol across all departments in our jurisdiction. Every officer, before engaging with a citizen, will remember this story." The applause was thunderous. but Marcus raised his hand for silence. "Commissioner, I'm honored, but I want the program to be called the Emma Johnson Program, in honor of a 4-year-old girl who sees me as an angel doctor, not as a black man. Because that's how all children should see all adults, by the kindness of our actions, not the color of our skin." Emma clapped and giggled, not fully understanding that a police program had just been named after her. Johnson wept openly. 3 years later, Marcus was in his office when he received an unexpected call. "Dr. Thompson, this is the governor's office. Can you come to the Capitol next week? May I ask the reason? The governor would like to personally present you with the Medal of Honor for Civil Merit. You are being recognized not only for your medical excellence, but also for your contribution to racial relations in our state." At the ceremony, Marcus stood on the stage next to the governor when he spotted a familiar crowd in the audience. Sarah and the twins, now 11 years old, Johnson with Emma, now 7, Helen Patterson, Dr. Harrison, and the entire hospital staff, dozens of patients he had operated on over the years. "Dr. Marcus Thompson," announced the governor, "represents the best of humanity. He faced injustice with dignity, responded to hatred with love, and turned a traumatic experience into a force for positive social change." When Marcus stepped up to the microphone for his thank you speech, Emma Johnson shouted from the audience, "Angel Doctor!" He smiled, looking at the little girl who, unknowingly, had changed a father's heart and inspired a program that had already trained over 1,000 police officers. "My story is not unique," Marcus said. "Every day, Black people, Latinos, and many other ethnicities face prejudice silently. The difference is that I had the chance to prove my worth by saving lives. But what about those who don't get that chance?" His voice echoed throughout the packed auditorium. The Black carpenter who builds houses masterfully, but is seen as a suspect in the neighborhood where he works. The Latina teacher who educates children with love, but whose competence is questioned. The young man studying medicine, but followed by security guards when he enters a bookstore. Marcus looked directly at the TV cameras broadcasting the ceremony. "My message is simple. Before judging anyone by their appearance, ask yourself, what story does this person carry? What contributions have they made to the world? What tears have they dried? What problems have they solved? What lives have they touched?" In the front row, Johnson held Emma, whispering in her ear, "Remember what Daddy taught you? Never judge anyone before knowing their story." Emma nodded, hugging her latest drawing, not just of the angel doctor, but of an operating room full of doctors of all colors saving lives together. When Marcus stepped down from the stage, he was embraced by Sarah. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "No, love, I'm proud of us, for having built a family that believes love always conquers hate." Maya and David ran to hug their father. "Daddy," David said, "when I grow up, I want to save people too. And I want to be a judge," said Maya, "to make sure stories like ours never happen again." Marcus hugged his children, knowing he had planted seeds that would bloom far beyond his own life. This is the story of Dr. Marcus Thompson, a man who chose to respond to prejudice with excellence, to hatred with love, and to injustice with dignity. How many stories like this go unnoticed every day? How many angel doctors are judged by their appearance before having the chance to show who they really are? If this story touched your heart, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming and transformation, and share in the comments. Have you ever been judged before being known? How did you react? Your story deserves to be told too. Your dignity deserves to be respected. Click on the video appearing on the screen now. Another true story that will move your emotions and make you reflect on the power of human redemption. See you in the next video. And remember, we all carry stories that deserve respect.